Hi is back on the Yong Lovers channel. That night, the sky seemed to be weaving a story for two hearts that had kept secrets for too long. The moon hung low, reflecting its light onto the calm surface of the water, as if silently witnessing something that would change everything. Jungkook stood not far from Taehyung, his body straight but his eyes betraying the storm of emotions he had been holding back for far too long. The air between them felt heavy, not because of the cold night, but because of the thousands of words that had never been spoken. Taehyung, wrapped in a thick jacket, gazed up at the sky. From the corner of his eye, he could feel Jungkook's gaze lingering. Up until now, they had communicated through gestures, smiles, or brief glances. There had never been words that truly explained what they felt. But tonight was different. There was a vibration in the air, like a melody only the two of them could hear. Jungkook's steps were slow but steady as he approached Taehyung. Each step felt like an irreversible decision. The sound of the wind rustling became the backdrop to those tense moments. Taehyung felt Jungkook's presence growing closer, and for some reason, his heart was beating faster than usual. Taehyung. The voice was soft, almost a whisper, but enough to make Taehyung turn his head. Their gazes met, and time seemed to stop. There was no crowd, no cameras, no cheers, just two hearts bound by something indescribable. Jungkook looked deeply into Taehyung's eyes, searching for the courage he had been hiding behind his laughter and jokes. His hand rose slowly, hesitant yet determined. Then, without warning, Jungkook pulled Taehyung into his embrace. Not a brief, casual hug, but one filled with emotion, embracing the soul as tightly as the body. Taehyung fell silent, his body initially stiff before finally melting into the warmth of the embrace. It felt like coming home after a long journey. Jungkook's shoulders felt strong, but from the beat of his heart, Taehyung knew the man was just as nervous. "I don't want to hold this back anymore," Jungkook murmured, barely audible. Taehyung closed his eyes, letting the words sink in. He knew those words weren't just an admission, they were a promise, a decision made after careful consideration. In that embrace, time seemed to stretch out. The night breeze blew gently, carrying the scent of damp earth and Jungkook's familiar cologne. Taehyung felt the warmth seep into his bones, and he didn't want to let go. To the outside world, it might just be a hug. But to them, it was the most honest language of love. Jungkook tightened his embrace, as if afraid that if he let go, Taehyung would disappear. "I'll always be here," he said again, this time more firmly. Taehyung slowly opened his eyes, feeling them grow hot. He knew this moment would stay in his heart forever. The moon above them seemed brighter, the stars twinkling a little more vibrantly. In the distance, the sounds of the night, insects, wind, leaves, blended into a symphony accompanying the embrace. There were no spectators, no camera flashes. Just two people who had finally dared to admit they belonged to each other. When Jungkook pulled his body back slightly, their gazes locked again. There were tears in Taehyung's eyes, but there was also a smile he couldn't hide. Jungkook touched his cheek gently, his thumb stroking softly. "We don't need to tell anyone," he said, "because we already know." Taehyung nodded slowly. "I know," he replied with a trembling voice. They both laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because they were relieved. The weight that had been pressing on their chests seemed to evaporate into the night air. Jungkook then took Taehyung's hand, holding it tightly. That grip wasn't just physical contact. It was a bond of promise that they would protect each other no matter what happened out there. Taehyung squeezed back, his eyes locked on Jungkook's as if to say, "I believe." They stood close together again, letting the silence speak. No words were stronger than the synchronized beats of their hearts. The night air began to feel warmer, or perhaps it was just the effect of the distance that no longer existed between them. The second embrace happened without them realizing it. This time it was softer, like a reaffirmation of the first embrace. Taehyung closed his eyes, savoring those moments as if afraid time would steal them away. In his heart, he knew this was the night everything changed. Jungkook exhaled deeply, lowering his head slightly so that their foreheads touched. "If this is a dream, I don't want to wake up," he said. Taehyung smiled faintly, his eyes sparkling in the moonlight. "If this is a dream, let's sleep forever," he replied. Those words made Jungkook close his eyes for a moment, savoring the pure happiness. There were no cheers, no dramatic music, just the two of them, and the world suddenly felt so small. That night, all fears and doubts vanished. In the distance, the clock struck midnight, but for them, time seemed to stand still. All that existed was feeling, promise, and love that they finally dared to acknowledge. Perhaps tomorrow the world would return to its chaos, with all its demands and expectations. But tonight, they chose to be two hearts that simply wanted to be together. That embrace became a story they would never fully share with anyone. Not out of shame, but because there were no words sufficient to describe it. ARMY might only catch a glimpse of their gaze or smile on stage later, but they will never know how deep the meaning of this night is. And under the moonlight that slowly begins to fade, Jungkook and Taehyung stand, still holding hands. Nothing has changed in the eyes of the world, but everything has changed in their hearts. That night, Taekook's love is forever etched. As the night breeze blew again, strands of Taehyung's hair trembled gently, partially covering his face. Jungkook, reflexively, gently moved them aside. The touch was simple, yet enough to make Taehyung's heart race again. Between them, there were no more barriers, only the honesty they finally dared to let flow. Taehyung stared into Jungkook's eyes longer than usual. There, he saw everything that had never been spoken. The fear of losing, the longing that never faded, and the love that was so sincere. That gaze made him want to hug him tighter, as if trying to merge into him. "You know, I've been waiting for this moment for so long," Taehyung said in a voice that was almost a whisper. Jungkook smiled, a smile that was not forced, one that only appeared when he felt truly safe. "And, you regret letting us wait that long," he replied. Those words warmed Taehyung's heart, even though the night air still pierced his skin. No further words were needed, for they knew this moment had already spoken volumes. The sound of small waves in the distance echoed softly, blending with the harmony of the night. The city lights shimmered faintly, serving as a backdrop they barely noticed. Everything around them felt blurry, except for each other's faces, which were clear. They felt as though they were inside a time bubble, where the outside world held no power. Taehyung then rested his head on Jungkook's shoulder, savoring the warmth of his body. Jungkook tilted his head slightly, feeling the familiar scent that always made him feel at home. In the silence, they memorized each other's small details, the beat of their hearts, their breaths, even the irregular rhythm of their hearts. Unconsciously, the embrace brought them into a sense of peace they rarely felt. All the busyness, all the pressure, all the public scrutiny that sometimes left them breathless, it all vanished. There was only a small space that night where they could be themselves without pretending. Jungkook gently rubbed Taehyung's back, a soothing and almost hypnotic motion. Taehyung closed his eyes, letting himself sink into it. He knew that tomorrow they might have to face the demanding world again. But tonight, he chose to simply be here, by Jungkook's side. When they finally released their embrace, it wasn't the end of the moment. It was the beginning of something greater. Their gazes remained locked, as if an invisible thread ensured they stayed connected. A faint smile graced both their faces, a smile only they could understand. And as they walked side by side away from that place, their hands remained tightly intertwined. The night held its secrets, the moon bore witness, and their hearts now beat in unison. No matter what the future held, they knew one thing for certain. Love had been spoken, not through words, but through an embrace they would cherish forever.